Hello, Jeremy. You are chairing the Taskforce, I'm sorry, the Stakeholder Review Taskforce.
Yes, it's a bit of a mouthful, isn't it?
But
that one, yeah.
Maybe you can recall what is the Taskforce about and what's the background?
Okay, sure. So I'm sure that members will remember that last year we had a resolution to support the formation of a group to look at our engagement with stakeholders in the widest sense. Of course, the background to this is that the management consulting industry is growing and continues to grow despite world economic troubles. And we think there are somewhere between 3 and 5 million people around the world who work in the management consulting profession or industry. Yet we know that our members only represent a small proportion of this. And one of the big things that ICMCI is wanting to do, of course, is to influence the profession as a whole, which includes non-members of IMCs. So we set up a small task force from different countries, US, UK, India, Bulgaria, and other people have chipped in contributions also, to look at what we could possibly do about this. There's always been the role of ICMCI to support its member institutes. Of course, we're a membership body, and that's very important. But there are some things that we felt that ICMCI could perhaps do, which would make our engagement with the global profession rather more substantial and significant, and that this would actually benefit members all around the world, because it would allow us to have a greater influence in the profession. Now, this task force met a couple of times during the year, and our discussions were then aired at a board strategy meeting where we developed some ideas further, and we've presented some recommendations, which I can discuss in a minute.
Thank you. I had the feeling that you have been discussing in the task force without any barriers and without with a very open mind.
Yeah. Yes, that's definitely true. We set a ground rule, if you like, at the very beginning, that we weren't going to minute or take notes or circulate our thoughts as we went along, because of course it's quite a delicate subject, this one, that ICMCI was founded as a member organization with IMCs as our members. Yet of course, some of the things that we've been discussing have been how to connect with stakeholders in different ways than going through our current membership, and that's something that we've produced a recommendation on to help consider that. So yeah, we've been very open-minded and thoughtful about how we've come up with ideas.
So it makes us curious, what's the outcome of this discussion?
Well, I mean, certainly, I think we've proposed some recommendations, which are shown in the report that has been attached to the strategy document. We looked at lots of different things, I have to say. Developing new services, for example. How could we attract global stakeholders to affiliate with ICMCI as a whole, rather than necessarily only through institutes? Because many of our institutes, most in fact, don't have large resources and don't have the ability to deal with interacting with large multinational firms who are often much bigger and more well-funded than the institutes themselves. So we wanted to find ways of attracting multinational firms, international academic institutions, for example, global funding bodies, who are all our stakeholders, and find a way of dealing with them directly from ICMCI, which would benefit ICMCI, but also benefit institutes in whose countries these organizations operate. Of course, we realize that to do that would need more resources. And of course, that always poses a problem for us, to ask for more volunteer time and to potentially recruit more people, because there's a cost associated with that. But one of the things that we recognized is that there are many countries who don't have an IMC, or whose IMCs are quite small, that actually can't make services and products available around the world. And we even talked about, how could non-members of ICMCI participate in our activities, and how can we partner directly with regional and global organizations, some of which we do already. For example, ISO is a good example in that sense, and UNIDO, the United Nations, that we're partnering with at the moment to allow us to run our meetings. So, I mean, we came up with 3 important recommendations, which will go forward into next year. One of the most important ones was to allow the board to establish what we might call observer status for selected organizations, to allow them to participate in ICMCI's activities without the need to become formal members in any way. And the board is working on the best way of codifying that, for example, around how much would that cost, what would be eligibility, what would be the privilege of those things. The board has that as a discussion item for the coming year. We also want to consult with the membership, which is everybody listening here today, on whether or not it would be desirable to change our bylaws, particularly Article 5 of the bylaws, where we can consider the circumstances under which the board might allow additional organizations to become members where already there is a member in a country. Now, that's a very delicate issue, and we do understand that. The board are already permitted to do this under very limited circumstances. And we want to have a discussion, really an open discussion with the membership, to understand how valuable this might be. So during next year, we're going to run a consultation on this question to allow countries to discuss and consider the benefits and drawbacks of that option. And our third recommendation is to fund resources to let ICMCI Centre engage directly with influential global and regional organizations. And again, the board will put together an identifying the relevant organizations, a report identifying the relevant organizations, and in each case, agree a business case, because at the moment, we can't just magic money out of thin air. We don't want to borrow, certainly at the current financial turmoil is not a situation where we would want to borrow to fund this sort of thing. But it's something that we need to discuss, that if, for example, we felt as a board it was appropriate to engage a staff member to deal, for example, with our relationships with global funding bodies, for instance, then we'd have to put a proper business case together to make sure that that would pay for itself. And each of these recommendations then are going to be implemented during the coming year.
Okay. Thank you, Jeremy, and thank you to the task force and having this view outside of ICMCI. Very well done. Good job. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much.